the most useful editors is the key editor. When you need to edit a MIDI part, simply double-click on the part to enter the key editor. You can actually change this behavior in the Preferences menu. Go to MIDI under Event Display. The default edit action is that the key editor will open when you double-click on a MIDI event. You can change this to one of the other editors if you like. For now, we'll leave it on Key Editor. The key editor has 5 main sections. The top one is where you can right-click and decide what options you can view. The next 2 sections are the status line and the info line. You can choose to display or hide these functions in the window layout setup over here. We'll discuss the status line in a moment, but for now, let's check this to make it visible. The info line shows you the particulars for any selected note. The next section is the area in which you edit and view all of your MIDI data. The last section is the controller lane, where you can draw in MIDI controller information. Since we've already covered basic MIDI editing in Level 1, we're going to jump straight ahead into the fancy features. Press the Show Part Borders button. You can now see where the boundaries of this part are. When I drag the borders around, you can see them change in the project page. You can actually move the part end before the end of the MIDI notes, and they will become unplayable notes outside of the part. This is a good way to hide notes without deleting them. You could also use the mute tool for this, but sometimes this is easier and quicker. When you move notes around and you go past the boundaries, Cubase will ask you if you want to enlarge the part. You can choose Enlarge or Move Anyway. Let's choose Move Anyway. Knowing about showing part borders is good, because if it was off and you moved a MIDI note, you might wonder why the dialog box about enlarging the part was popping up. When editing the MIDI data, you might want to turn off the Solo Editor button so that you can hear just what is playing in this editor. When you exit this editor, all of your music will play together again. When Solo is on, you might want to loop the area you are editing. Create a loop and make sure Cycle is on. The Acoustic Feedback button allows you to hear the notes when you are moving, editing, or drawing notes in. Activate Auto Scroll so you can follow the project cursor as it moves across the key editor. This is handy when you are playing back while zoomed in. You may, however, want Auto Scroll disabled while you are editing a part. That's what Suspend Auto Scroll while editing does. Make sure both of these buttons are on, and make sure the key editor is scrolling. Now begin to edit a note. The key editor stops scrolling and the button turns orange, indicating that the scrolling has been suspended. When you're done editing, simply click the Auto Scroll button again. Even if you attempt to disable it, Suspend Auto Scroll won't let the page move again until you press the actual Auto Scroll button. Let's turn it back on. When Auto Select Controllers is activated, selecting controller events will also select their respective notes. This is handy for identifying what certain note controller data belongs to. You might have a lot of MIDI data and it can be confusing with this feature on. I'm now going to show you why we activated the status line earlier. This display always shows the position of the mouse relative to the piano roll and grid. When you're moving notes around or trying to draw in new ones, this display comes in real handy. The chord note display allows you to see what chord is being formed by a group of notes. Just press play and the chords read out in real time in the display. Just watch this area as the music plays. parts that I have assigned 3 different colors to. I'm playing the example project with the cycle turned on. If you want to edit these 3 parts at the same time, you can. All you have to do is select the parts and either double-click on any of the events or hit the Enter key on your QWERTY keyboard, not your numeric keypad. And there they are, all 3 parts at the same time in the key editor. The only problem is I can't tell which note belongs to which. To fix this, you can change the color scheme. Depending on how big your screen is, you may need to remove different viewing options so that you can see the color scheme selector. Change the color scheme to Part. This lets us see the parts more easily in the same colors that we had on the project page. If something other than Part is selected, you can still tell which part you are editing because it will have a more intense color than the other parts. You can switch between each of the parts by selecting them in the parts list. As you draw in new MIDI notes, Cubase will automatically enter these MIDI notes into the selected part. You can turn on the Edit Active Part Only button so that the active part remains selected and the MIDI notes get entered into that part. We can draw in MIDI notes freely or have them locked to time. The Snap button turns the snapping to time on and off. Turn the snap on and make sure that Grid is selected beside it. Now change the quantize to quarter notes and the length quantize to quarter notes as well. You are now drawing in quarter note divisions that have the length of quarter notes. Change the length quantize to 16th notes. Now you're drawing in quarter note divisions that have the length of 16th notes. Change them both to 16th notes and grab the Paint tool found here. Now you can draw in 16th notes across the screen anywhere you want. Okay, let's make Cubase happy. Okay, that's enough goofing around. Back to business. If you hold down the controller command key, they won't jump to different notes. The nudge palette allows you to move or trim notes in exact increments according to the quantized settings. This is great for doing quick, precise editing. The length quantize has effect on the trim end, right and left. Using the transpose palette, we can move notes up or down by semitones or octaves. This again allows for quick, precise editing that keeps things from getting sloppy. When Indicate Transpositions is activated, Cubase shows us the transposition. For example, if we make a transpose track and insert transpositions, and then go back to the key editor, we can see the notes that the transpose track is transposing. The notes don't change, but the transpose track will change them. And if you forgot that you were using a transpose track, you might be pulling your hair out trying to figure out why the notes were playing the wrong pitch. Here we have a piano track and a drum track. If you're opening up a Cubase 5 project in a fresh install of Cubase 6, possibly on a different computer, don't sweat it if your Halium 1 presets don't load automatically. Most of the time, you can just assign the output to Halion Sonic SE, and with a few quick steps, you're up and running. Now click in this field here and open the patch browser. Now click where it says Search Results. If you look over here, you can see the old Halion 1 preset name. Type in that name over here. Double-click to load the patch and you're done. Now let's repeat the process with the drum track. If it says No Track Preset here, you may have made a custom patch that you don't have on your new computer. Simply audition the different parts on the right with the appropriate filters selected. In this case, all I have to go on is drums, So let's flip through a couple drum presets and find something that fits. You could spend all day playing with the drum presets, but this one sounds good enough for now. Now you can easily set up your old Halion 1 presets in Halion Sonic SE. We'll talk more about Halion Sonic SE later in this series. I just wanted to give you a quick tip for now. Now double-click on the piano part to get back into the key editor. The controller lane area of the key editor lets you draw in controller information like velocity, pitch bend, aftertouch, etc. Right-click at the bottom left of the window to remove the controller lane. Now click the plus button here to create a new controller lane window. Now that this area is back, you can either click the plus button or right-click here to add a controller lane window. You can add a whole bunch of controller lanes, but as you can see, it takes up quite a bit of space. Let's have one lane control velocity and the other control pitch bend. Let's freely draw in changes to both of these controllers. If the object selection tool doesn't automatically become a pencil when you enter the controller lane, you can either right-click to select the pencil tool, or you can switch between both of them by clicking the Alt key. Now let's take a look at pitch bend. You can write smaller controller data by changing the quantize above. Let's go smaller and see what it looks like. Let's go even smaller still. Now we're working with the example project, Key Editor 3B. Sometimes you may want to use the MIDI step input to record MIDI information that you can't necessarily play in. Make sure that step MIDI input is visible. Now activate the step input button and you'll see a blue line pop up. This is where the MIDI notes are going to be entered. Now position the blue line where you want it by clicking on the note display area or by using the left and right arrow keys on your computer keyboard. Let's start at bar 3. Next, we want to choose our note value. Let's choose 16th notes. Make sure quantize and length quantize are set to 16th notes. Next, pick Record Pitch to record the actual notes that I enter and click Record Note on Velocity. This way, Cubase will record both the notes that I'm playing and how loud I'm playing them. You're only limited by your imagination, not the speed of your hands. Be careful when playing multiple notes at the same time. You have to make sure that you don't leave one note hanging on while the other notes are changing. Now let's play it back. Not bad, eh? This feature is kind of like having your own custom arpeggiator. Remember, you can choose to hear this part alone or the whole mix by clicking the Solo Editor button up here. If you want to enter a rest while you're using the MIDI step input, press the right arrow key on your keyboard. If you want to insert some MIDI notes in the middle of what you recorded, then press the Move Insert Mode button. If you want to loop a particular section of the key editor independently of the project page, you can click this button here to activate the independent track loop function. Notice that the blue loop region disappears. Now it's time to set the region with the standard triangle loop markers. You may have to zoom out to find them. Now set your independent loop region the way you would with normal locators. You'll notice that this loop region is purple instead of blue, so you can tell the loop regions apart. Now start playback again. The loop region plays for the selected part, but not for the drums. Remember, you can choose to solo the selected part or not during playback. This is a great way to test if a section of your MIDI part is working with the song. Turning off the independent track loop will return the loop settings to the project loop settings.